guys, how's it going? And welcome back to the race reaction, and obviously the final one in 2022. And here we're going to be talking about the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And yeah, it wasn't the bestest of finales. Obviously there's no championship to decide either. Obviously we had the battle with Perez and Leclerc, but apart from that, the race wasn't the best. I mean, don't get me wrong, we still saw some great overtaking and some intriguing stuff at the front, like I said. So lots to get into, and last time in 2022. So let's get on with the race reaction for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So we'll start it off then, and for the last time I'm saying this, Red Bull are the first team this weekend. Verstappen taking pole and also taking the win pretty dominantly, as he has been doing all season long. Made the one-stop work and never looked back the entire race, really. There was obviously a moment where there was a crash towards the end of the race, but there was no safety car or anything. I think that was obviously the only thing that was going to trouble him the entire Grand Prix. So yeah, once again, Verstappen, dominant, brilliant season, and it's fair to say that the guy is on a bit of a roll at the moment. So hopefully, hopefully for the Red Bull fans, he'll be able to keep it up. I'm sure he will. You know, he's still got many more years left in him. It just depends, obviously, if the Red Bull's going to be good next year with the, obviously, wind reduction time that they've got. It can play a big part and maybe involve Ferrari and Mercedes more at the top, but we'll wait and see. But nevertheless, apart from that, Max has had a fantastic season, so well done, Max. And Perez, man, Perez, towards the end, we were getting so hyped. We were actually supporting Red Bull for the first time this season. As you guys know, I'm more Mercedes fan and support the British drivers, but yeah, Perez was hunting Leclerc down. Obviously, Red Bull decided to pit Perez sort of 3 or 4 laps before the second pit stop window sort of came open. So I think that was a bit of a blunder strategy for Red Bull, but yeah, a few more laps and he would have done it. But unfortunately, we ran out of laps, and he had to settle for 3rd place, which means he was only 3rd in the Drivers' Championship as well. So yeah, it was a bit of a shame. And obviously, you know, if he got given the points in Brazil, it could have been a whole different story, but we've already been through all that, so we're not going to go through that again. But yeah, Red Bull, I think obviously, you know, they had a dominant performance with Vettel in 2010 to 2013, and it's fair to say that I think they're definitely back. But like I said, it will be interesting next year with the reduction time in the tunnel, whether it will hamper their season next year. But Red Bull, nonetheless, fantastic season, and I'm sure they'll go into the winter with very high hopes. So next up then is Ferrari, and Charles Leclerc P2, and managed to hold on to the, well, finally had something go his way for once. P2 in the race, and P2 secures it in the championship as well. So that was exactly what Leclerc needed, because honestly, everything else this season has just been woeful for Ferrari. Not down to Leclerc's, well, not all down to Leclerc's, you know, driving, but also Ferrari as well. So just hopefully they can come back strong next year. But yeah, Leclerc had a pretty quiet race, to be honest. It just got a little bit stale up at the front. Red Bulls were leading, then Ferrari 3 and 4, and then Mercedes were sort of nowhere this weekend, unfortunately, and obviously we'll get on to Lewis in a minute. But yeah, Leclerc couldn't really do much more, to be honest. And Carlos Sainz in P4 obviously had the incident with Hamilton into, I think it's turn 6, down towards the first chicane, and wasn't quite able to keep ahead of Lewis. Sort of pushed him off the track. Lewis cut the corner and carried on going. And yeah, I thought it could have been a little bit more fairer from Sainz's side, but obviously, you know, he doesn't want Hamilton to get through because, you know, he's a good driver, and Sainz knows that. But yeah, a little bit clumsy, and then Hamilton got past him, and then Sainz managed to re-overtake him once again. So yeah, apart from that, then it was just a sort of drive to see how far he could get up, really. And yeah, only P4 he managed. He was catching on to the back of Lewis until he retired towards the end of the race. So yeah, a bit of a shame from Lewis's side, but nevertheless, good day for Carlos Sainz. I think he probably would have wanted a bit more, but nevertheless, yeah, good result. And next up then is Mercedes, and like I just mentioned, we'll start with Lewis because he was sort of more of the talk of the day. George had quite a quiet race, to be honest, but Lewis had the incident with Sainz, had to go over the sausage curve and then sort of cut the corner, stayed ahead of Sainz. Then it got investigated, he had to give the place back, and then unfortunately he was sort of nowhere after that, and then we thought he had damage. Apparently the engine kept cutting out, which is a common thing from Lewis on the radio. I don't know if that's something that well, hopefully they'll be able to sort out next year. And this is their first mechanical retirement from the whole season. So it couldn't have come at a better time, really, in the final race. But it would have been good to see Lewis finish the race. But unfortunately, he had to retire towards the end of the race. And yeah, a bit of a shame. But yeah, I think Lewis will just want to put this season behind him. And obviously for good reason, because it has been a very difficult season for Mercedes after dominating for the last 7 years, whatever it is. It's it's definitely hard to see Lewis in that position. Obviously, you know me, I'm a Mercedes fan, I'll say it every weekend, but yeah, unfortunately had to retire in the end. And then, like I mentioned, George Russell as well, he had a sort of quicker pace for Lewis towards the end of the race. Towards the start of the race after Sainz got past him, and then yeah, just sort of had a quiet one, really. Had a 5-second pit stop as well for an unsafe release on Norris, I think it was, one of the McLarens, and that kind of hampered his progress as well a little bit. But yeah, Mercedes didn't quite have the pace that they showed in Brazil, but they definitely set up the car better in the race, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be. And yeah, P5 for George Russell, and then a DNF for Lewis Hamilton. Next up, McLaren then, and Lando Norris had a fantastic weekend, more or less the whole entire weekend, to be honest. P6 in the Grand Prix, looked very good in qualifying as well. I actually thought he was going to be challenging the top 6, but unfortunately wasn't quite able to. But nevertheless, McLaren looked pacey. Well, Norris looked pacey anyway, but we all know Daniel Ricciardo not putting in the best performances. But yeah, Norris, I think he can safely say he's had a very decent season this weekend, and obviously weren't quite able to finish ahead of Alpine, but nevertheless it's still a great result for Norris, and it just proves how much he's dominated Ricciardo this season, just miles ahead of him in the championship. So yeah, Norris will go into the break, I imagine, very, very happy. Daniel Ricciardo also P9 as well, so a double points finish for McLaren, but obviously wasn't enough to take 4th place off Alpine in the Constructors' Championship. So yeah, Ricciardo had a decent race as well. At one point he was down to P17. I was like, oh my god, here we go. I'm pretty sure he started on the hard tyres, if I'm not mistaken, and then was slowly making his way up, and then yeah, managed to finish in P9 somehow. So I don't know how that happened, but yeah, he was having a few good scraps here and there in the midfield, and it was good to see Ricciardo in the points as well. Next up, Alpine then, and Esteban Ocon in P7, and Fernando Alonso DNF'd about halfway through the Grand Prix, I think. But yeah, we'll start with Ocon. Looked pretty pacey early on. He was under pressure a lot from Vettel, which was a great scrap, by the way, really good to see. And then Alonso was slowly behind them as well. So it was an intriguing battle. Obviously, you know, the two most experienced drivers on the grid having a good old go, and Ocon holding them all up. But then once that all got released, Ocon, yeah, just had a pretty decent race, to be honest. P7, like I said, wasn't quite able to finish ahead of Norris, but nevertheless did what he could really in that Alpine, and like I said, they still hold on to 4th in the Constructors as well. And then, like I mentioned, Fernando Alonso DNF'd halfway through the Grand Prix. I think it was just some sort of mechanical failure, which was such a shame, because I thought he was going to, you know, drive alongside Vettel to the grid, and they were going to do donuts together, because obviously Alonso had the tribute helmet of Vettel's as well, and so did Mick Schumacher as well, I believe. But yeah, so it's such a shame to see Alonso retire, but I haven't actually seen all the aftermath yet, because I haven't, I just came up to record this straight away, so I'll have to go see that. But yeah, Alonso DNF'd, unfortunately, and he's final race for Alpine, I think he'll be happy with, because obviously he's had enough, and when he gets to an end of a team, he just wants to move on and forget about it. So yeah, I think Alonso's going to be happy this year's over. So next up then, Aston Martin and Lance Stroll. This man just confuses the hell out of me every single time. He is just there, and first of all he looks miles behind Vettel, and then all of a sudden he's just ahead of Vettel, well in the points, or just about on the points. Today he finished P8 ahead of Vettel. What on earth is going on? P8 for Lance Stroll. He was up behind Vettel, and I think it was, I can't remember who it was that Vettel was fighting. I think it was an AlphaTauri. And then I saw Lance got ahead of him, and then he just kept on going and going. So fair play to Lance Stroll. He did try and go past Guan Yu Zhou, and then had to give the place back because he took him off the track, which is fair play to Stroll. And yeah, didn't really put a foot wrong this weekend, so you can't say really anything bad about him. So fair play to Lance Stroll. And then Sebastian Vettel, obviously he's home. His last Grand Prix of 2022, and in Formula 1 in general as well. And it was very emotional to see him doing the donuts on the start-finish straight as well. But P10, unfortunately, did manage to get into the points, but it could have been a lot more, I think, for Vettel. And as he said in the interviews afterwards, I think they did go a little bit wrong with the strategy. So a bit of a shame there, but nevertheless, it was great to see Vettel just smiling on the grid doing the donuts. It was so emotional, and I don't know about you guys, but it's one of my favourite things to see, drivers just being happy, just celebrating, doing donuts like that. It's just such a warm, good feeling. So yeah, well done, Sebastian. You'll be missed. I used to hate you back in the Red Bull days, but you have really matured and you've become a really likeable character. So thank you for all the good times, and yeah, you'll be deeply missed. So next up, AlphaTauri then, and Yuki Tsunoda was in the mix for the battles, it has to be said. P11, just missing out on points for AlphaTauri. It's been a very difficult season for AlphaTauri, and I think they'll be definitely happy once this year is over, which it finally is for them. And Pierre Gasly, P14, again, he was there or thereabouts, but once again, AlphaTauri just one of those teams that don't really have the pace. We see them on the TV quite a lot, but it doesn't really resolve into anything. So it's a bit of a shame, but yeah, obviously Gasly now moving on to Alpine as well, and I'm very glad he's out of that Red Bull junior program, which, well, isn't really a junior program, but you know what I mean, the sister team of Red Bull, because I just don't think he was going to do anything there. And obviously, you know, AlphaTauri are never gonna become a more popular team than Red Bull. So yeah, finally glad he's out of there, but obviously he still has to be careful, Gasly, because he's on 11 penalty points, which does carry on over to next season. So it will be interesting to see if he actually does get that ban, but we'll wait and see on that one. But yeah, P14 for Gasly and P11 for Yuki Tsunoda. So next up, Alfa Romeo then, and Guan Yu Zhou in P12, and Valtteri Bottas was once again had one of those anonymous weekends really. P15 for Bottas. I think we saw him in one battle at one point, and then like I said, with Guan Yu Zhou, we saw him in a few battles here and there. He was having a good old scrap with Vettel and Stroll, I believe it was, and then like I said, Stroll went off the track, overtook him, and then gave the place back straight away. But then obviously Stroll got past him once again. But yeah, once again, Alfa Romeo just not having the pace. But it has been a good season, I think, for Alfa Romeo. Definitely better than the last few that they've had when Raikkonen and Gio were there. But yeah, it's definitely been a good season for Guan Yu Zhou as well. Obviously, the rookie, and yeah, really good to see lots of new talent coming through next year as well. So it's going to be a very exciting year next year. But yeah, Guan Yu Zhou, P12, Valtteri Bottas P15. Another team that was pretty anonymous was Williams. P13 for Albon, and Latifi DNF'd literally right towards the end of the Grand Prix, I think with like 2 laps to go or something. So not sure what was that about. But yeah, obviously Latifi's last race as well, and yeah, he's not really going to be missed. And Albon again, yeah, just once again really outshining that Williams. Unfortunately wasn't able to convert it into points, but you gotta admit, you know, he's in a Williams, so you can't really say anything to him about that. But nevertheless, yeah, it's been a good year for Albon. Hopefully Williams can get their stuff sorted next year and hopefully fight more consistently in the points, but we've always been saying that for the last I don't know how many years now, and it's not come to anything, unfortunately. So yeah, P13 for Alexander Albon and a DNF for Latifi. And finally then, the final team, and that is Haas F1. Bit of a different weekend to last weekend. They were nowhere pretty much all weekend, didn't really have any pace at all, and in the race it proves it. Schumacher P16 and somehow finished ahead of Magnussen, because Magnussen finished in P17. But the reason I'm surprised at that is because obviously Mick made the contact with Latifi and they both went off into the barrier, managed to continue. We actually really got so excited then, because I thought a safety car was hopefully going to be deployed to let some action happen at the front, but unfortunately wasn't meant to be. So yeah, P17 and P16 for Mick and Magnussen. So there we go, guys. That is it for the Abu Dhabi race reaction and all the races from 2022. I hope you have enjoyed this series just like I did last year. I hope you have enjoyed all of them. I really enjoy making these videos. They are one of my favourites to make, and it shows because I've been very consistent with the series as well. So if you do want to see more of these next year and in the future to come as well, give the video a thumbs up. I will be doing a bunch of content on the end of the season. Well, just the majority of the 2022 season, but I'll be doing sort of my reaction to my predictions that I made at the start of the year, which wasn't good. Thinking about doing a podcast or some sort of review of the whole season. Don't know if that's going to be with me or someone else. I did put a thing out on my TikTok, if you guys want to go over there. So if anyone does want to get in contact with me, like I said, just comment, message me on all my socials. If you want to get in like a podcast or just talk about F1 and we can do for the channel, just let me know. I do have a friend that I'm considering doing it with as well, so hopefully all that goes ahead. But yeah, we'll be doing loads more content on the actual season as well, so stay tuned for that. Like I said, if you have enjoyed this video and you want this series to continue as well, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on any more videos of mine, and I will see you all again next year, guys. Take care.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind.